And I remember after the x-ray, me and my husband went and we had brunch and we were just like chilling and we were pulling into my garage and I got a call from my doctor. I was declared a stage 2 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. When you're a young person that's been diagnosed with cancer, you get the sympathy looks, or people like, oh my gosh, how did you end up in this situation? And I didn't feel kind of that vibe as I was going through it, but I will say that the entire experience was so scary and so overwhelming. I was like, oh my gosh, like, are the same things going to happen to me? And is this it? Like, I'm going to die. Like, it was just like all of these grief and truths about cancer and life and everything just kind of swarming around my head and not really knowing what to do with all of those thoughts. It's such a whirlwind and such a shock. And I really think it could make or break a marriage no matter what, right? Like, we're lucky we have support. Some people don't. And it really shows true colors right away. It's a perspective shift 100%. And I feel like I live more now. I'm not so robotic through the day to day. Like I have a different appreciation. I feel like the living aspect is completely different now than it was prior to cancer. And I value things just completely differently.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we have a very special guest. We have Michelle Patidar. She is a 7-year cancer survivor and an integrative nutrition and cancer recovery coach. So today we're going to be talking about her journey, her diagnosis story, and then she'll give us some tips and tricks to swap out products around our house and how to live a life that's more supportive to cancer prevention and cancer recovery. All right, let's get into it. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I have so many things that I want to talk to you about, but what I think I'd love to start with is hearing a little bit about your journey, your relationship with cancer. I know you got diagnosed young as well. I was 35. I think you were 32. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear just, kind of what was your life like leading up to that? And then, when you got diagnosed and what the prognosis was.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, gosh, yes, I was 32 when I was diagnosed. Life leading up to my cancer diagnosis was tricky, to be honest with you. I got married at 30. And about 3 months after I got married, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. And they gave her 6 weeks to live. And our whole world just got turned upside down. My family we just don't have illness that runs in our family like this. It was really the first thing that ever really rocked us as a family.
Yeah.
And it was so incredibly stressful. And so all of a sudden, my husband and I became her primary caregivers. We moved her in and she ended up living 6 months instead of 6 weeks, which is time that I'm incredibly grateful for sure. But it was also a very, very stressful period. I think being, 30 to 31 years old and never understanding cancer, never seeing cancer, I really got this front row seat to disease. And she was so far gone in her journey that it was the worst front row seat that I could have gotten because it really destroyed her body, and the cancer spread to her brain and her mind, and it just did like really horrible things. So as her primary caregiver, my job was to keep her alive every day. And that meant calling ambulances. Her oncologist was telling me what I had to do to keep her alive every day. And it was very, very stressful as I was working full time and then 3 months into marriage. So it was just like a really chaotic time. So after she passed.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And I can't imagine what you went through, but the fact that you basically, you put your life on pause to take care of your mother, I think that's so admirable. And I'm so sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it was a really difficult loss. And I think, as anybody loses a parent, it's really hard. It's really traumatic. And it definitely put like a perception of what cancer was in my head. And so after she passed, me and my husband were like, okay, like let's move forward. Let's try to move forward. So I was traveling, you know, going on girls' trips. You know, I really thought I was the healthiest version of myself. And looking back now, I wasn't. And I know so much more now than when I did when I started, but
Right.
I just wasn't. But I really thought I was eating right and doing the right things. And the reality is I was so trapped in grief and I was stuck in that. I didn't really know how to move forward. I did end up reaching out to a grief therapist and I started that journey, which was so incredibly helpful. And my therapist at the time also herself ended up being a cancer survivor. Funny how the universe works in that way, because about a year after my mom passed, I literally just got off a plane from a girls' trip from New Orleans, and it was like my mom's 1 year anniversary, and I had a dream about her. And in my dream, I was brushing my hair, and all my hair started to fall out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? And we were just chit chatting. That we were talking about the Kardashians. I remember it. Like I got out of the shower and I was brushing my hair, and all my hair started to fall out. And my mom kind of started to lead me down this path, and I resisted it. And I was like, no, no, no. And I remember being very scared in my dream and very like I tightened up. So when I woke up from that dream, it felt like I like jerked and like pulled a muscle in my neck. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that was such an intense dream, you know? So I just knew that I was like tensed up, and I didn't really think about it after that. But that pain in my neck got more intense, almost like by the hour, you know, but 3 days have passed and I was like, I think I need to go to the emergency room. This is crazy. Right.
Yeah.
And,
you hadn't had pain like that before.
I've never had pain like that before. And like, keep in mind, I was working out like 5 days a week. I was doing HIIT. I was like addicted to HIIT at the time. So I'm like, oh, like, I'm sure like, you know, it could have been a pull muscle, but I just knew from this dream, I'm like, I just feel like I like jerked the wrong way and I like pulled like a neck muscle. And I remember like telling my dad, and my dad's like, you know, don't worry about it. Cause I told him, I was like, I just feel like something else is going to happen. And my dad's like, no, like, it's okay. Like everything's going to be okay. You've just been like traumatized by everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I really feel like something's going to happen because, what I failed to mention was 6 months prior to this, I ended up having a benign pituitary tumor in the base of my brain. So I had that removed. It was not cancerous, but it was, again, a huge shock.
Of course.
So I recovered from that. And then at 6 months after, this is what happened to it. So my dad's like, you've just been traumatized by everything that's happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I ended up just going into my PCP, my general doctor, and told her what happened. And I joked as I went in and I said, I just want to make sure I don't have cancer or anything. Ha ha ha. Cause she knew like my mom had cancer. Mm-hmm. And she took a bunch of blood work and was like, you know, I'm sure it's just a pulled muscle, take some muscle relaxers. I'll circle back when the blood work comes back. And when my blood work came back, my D-dimer level was slightly elevated, and like slightly, not highly elevated or anything. But she's like, this blood panel controls blood clots. And she's like, that's very weird. She's like, it's not like very elevated, so I'm not concerned, but really it can't have you walking around if you have a blood clot. And I remember just thinking like, this is so weird. Like, why would I have a blood clot? It was very confusing, and I felt very overwhelmed by it all. So she was like, I'm going to put an x-ray order in, go in, let's get your chest x-rayed and make sure you don't have any blood clots in your lungs. I said, okay, fine. So I went on a Saturday morning, and I remember after the x-ray, me and my husband went and we had brunch, and we were just like chilling, and we were pulling into my garage, and I got a call from my doctor. I'm like, it's Saturday at like 2:30. Like, this is very strange. Bizarre. And I answered it, and she was like, listen, we found this huge tumor in your chest. It's 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. And we have to get it biopsied like ASAP. And I did. And it really started my whole process of it becoming cancer.
Wow.
And it was
where in your chest was it located?
So it was leaning right against my heart. So what happened was I was leaning against my heart, which made me have 4 blood clots in my left arm because of all the pressure. So my D-dimer level was elevated because I had those 4 blood clots running through my arm. Yeah. So right when we found out I had a tumor and I got it biopsied, and then I had an appointment with an oncologist 2 weeks after I got the biopsy results, she admitted me into the ER right away. And she was like, you can't walk around with blood clots. This is
Yeah.
dangerous. And then they had to obviously scan everywhere to see like where the cancer had spread. I was declared a stage two,
Okay.
stage two non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay.
And so it was a very traditional chemo regimen that they recommended. So there was no surgery, no radiation, but I did inpatient chemo. So I was
Okay.
in the hospital for 5 to 6 days at a time on a chemo drip, about 6 different chemo drip drugs every 2 weeks for 6 rounds. So, my oncologist, who was amazing and really just my North Star in all of this, really held my hand and walked me through the whole process and was like, listen, this is a really hard traditional chemo regimen, but you're young, you're 32. Like, I think you can do this. I think you can, as long as your body responds well to this, like you will come out the other side.
Right.
And at that point, I didn't really feel like I had a lot of choices, and I went
Yeah.
through with it. I ended up doing IVF prior to help save like my egg supply and everything because
That's so good.
yeah, it was really good. And the entire medical team that I worked with was so amazing about it and so understanding. And I think, and I'm sure you got this a lot too, when you're a young person that's been diagnosed with cancer, you get the sympathy looks, or people like, oh my gosh, how did you end up in this situation? And
Yeah.
I didn't feel kind of that vibe as I was going through it, but I will say that that entire experience was so scary and so overwhelming after seeing what my mom went through.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
like that being my only experience with cancer, I was like, oh my gosh, like, are the same things going to happen to me? And is this it? Like, am I going to die? Like, it was just like
Yeah.
all of these grief and truths about cancer and life and everything just kind of swarming around my head and not really knowing what to do with all of those thoughts. And it became very overwhelming at such a young age as
Yeah.
you. Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the fact that, you just had lost your mother to cancer and just having that firsthand experience of that and then going through it yourself, I think it's so natural that your mind would go there. I think for the rest of us that haven't experienced the loss of a family member with it, like we still have those thoughts.
Yeah.
So in your situation, it makes complete sense that you were, feeling all of that. What was your support like during that time?
So my support was great. My husband, like, gosh, talk about like full circle, like getting married 3 months before like this entire
Yeah.
journey started. Like, there's no way I could have done it without him. He was so
Yeah.
supportive. My job, I worked from the hospital the entire time. Like, everyone was super flexible, and my dad was amazing. I'm from Michigan originally, and I reside in the Chicago area now. So he would come up every round. Him and my husband would sit in my hospital room, just day in and day out, just kind of being there and supporting me. And it was very nice to have that support by my
Yeah.
side. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually so interesting. So I actually was only married for 3 months as well, before I got pregnant, and then 3 months into my pregnancy is when I got diagnosed. So really similar timeline, to what you're saying, but I agree. I think it's like we went from like just getting married to this like life altering
Mhm.
diagnosis, and I think that really speeds up like your honeymoon period and like your support system, and just really you can just tell like who's showing up for you. And so in that aspect it's good, like you really see that your partner is there for you through everything. But it's such a shift, right? Because you go from like one of the happiest moments of your life to a
Mhm.
cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's such a whirlwind and such a shock. And I really think it could make or break a marriage no matter what, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're lucky we have support. Some people don't. And it really shows true colors right away. And it's hard. It's hard to be a um, being young diagnosed with cancer, being a young cancer patient. All of your friends are starting their careers or marriages or just
Yeah.
starting families. And you feel like you're like literally just fighting for your life. It's two very completely different levels of reality, and the
Yeah.
shift can be very big. You don't notice it in it, but you definitely, or at least for me, I can only speak on my experience. I noticed it so much after, just like
Right.
this huge divide of like, oh my gosh, like, once you've been diagnosed and you've gone through that process, you can never go back. You're never the
Right.
same person. You're not meant to be the same person either. And like, that's
Right.
okay. But there's an incredible shift that happens with friends, with family, with your marriage against other people too. And like your friend
Yeah.
circle, it changes your entire life from inside and out.
Absolutely. I think similar to what you were saying. So I think before I got diagnosed, like I thought I was really healthy and I was super active. I was doing, Soul Cycle and berries 5, 6 days a week. And
Mhm.
I was, what I thought was eating healthy. I think I have a
Mhm.
different view on that now.
Yep.
But I was kind of in the peak of my adult life, and then the diagnosis happened, and you kind of just, the more you learn, the better it is, because you realize like there's so many things that you were probably doing that no longer suit you in this new
Mhm.
chapter of life. But it is, I think, to what you're saying, I think just like the reflection on like how much we've been through, like I feel like I'm a totally different person now than I was, 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And in a good way, I would say, but just completely different. And I think people that are on different paths and are just living the healthy life, like having their kids, getting married, focusing on their careers, like I kind of just feel like we've gone in pretty different directions. And just day to day, like how I view things, like what I focus my energy on, and all of that just feels very, very different now.
Oh, absolutely. It's a perspective shift, 100%. And
Yeah.
you actually feel like I feel like I live more now. I'm not so robotic through the day to day. Like I have a
Yes.
different appreciation. Um, I I feel like the living aspect is completely different now than it was prior to cancer. And I value things just completely differently. And even being around like friends and stuff that, have never experienced cancer or been touched by cancer in any way, you see the difference. And like, oh, I'm just going to do
Yeah.
this and check the box, where it's like, like
Yeah.
savoring the moment a little bit more, just like understanding to be like more present and awake to what's happening
Yeah.
around you, because life is just so short and you just never know, truly.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I totally agree. Okay. So you went through your treatments. Tell me, so you look great. I'm assuming you're in a good place now, scans wise. Tell me a little bit about like where you're at today with your health, and then I want to hear about how you got into, cancer coaching and nutrition coaching and all of that.
Yeah, for sure. So, yes, I'm 7 years cancer free, a little over 7 years cancer free now.
Yay.
Yes. And this was the first year I actually haven't gotten scanned.
Okay.
So that, cancer recovery is its own journey in and of itself. And I feel like this year I'm in a really good place. I feel like my health is in a good place. I feel like I have a good handle on who I am, what I need to do on the day to day to keep myself healthy. And I feel very grateful to be in that. But I feel like my entire path leading up to this moment has prepped me for that. Because when I was done with cancer treatments, and this is also how I got into cancer recovery coaching, is that
Mhm.
I really struggled with cancer recovery.
Okay.
As I rang the bell, I remember like looking over to my husband and my dad. I'm like, nobody take pictures of me. I never want to remember this. And I mark my words, I will never talk about cancer ever again for the rest of my life. Like
Oh, wow.
that was my mindset. Cause I was like, I just want this to disappear and I want to go back to my old self in my normal life. Like I just wanted to believe it never happened.
Right.
And, I was probably obviously dealing with like a lot of denial. I was in therapy too throughout like all of my cancer journey, which helped so much with just
Mhm.
processing. But something that I learned through therapy was like, my therapist was like, you were like an athlete. Like you just had to get through every round until you heard cancer free and like you were done with your chemo regimen. And she's like, you couldn't think about anything else that was going on around you. She's like, that's a coping mechanism. If you experienced everything you were really thinking and feeling, you would have had like a mental breakdown. Nobody's allowed, no one can handle all of that, you know? So I remember it was like a month or two after recovery, you know, the processing really started to set in. And it's like you realize that you don't process anything through treatments. You're kind of in this just get through it mentality in this survival mode. And
Right.
then it's kind of all starts coming crashing down, at least like the mental and the emotional piece of it. So I realized as throughout recovery, I was dealing with extreme anxiety, PTSD, fear of reoccurrence. I had so many things wrong with my body from like a nutritional standpoint, you know, and I love my oncologist, but there was no help with like, you're done with cancer now. Here
Right.
is what you do. Here's your recovery plan. You know, it's like when you break a bone, you go
Yeah.
through physical therapy, you have a OT, you have a plan in place, you know exactly how to get back to normal living. No one does that for cancer survivors. No one does that
Right.
for cancer patients. There is no exit plan as you are exiting. So you're
Right.
left to deal with this loss of identity and anxiety and fears of reoccurrence and the PTSD and what do I eat? And some people are terrified of food. Some people lose weight. Some people gain weight. You know, you're all
Yeah.
over the board and it's so difficult to manage. And there's just a huge gap in support for recovery. And it's a huge miss. So I remember just feeling like a fish out of water. Like, and I would ask my oncologist and my nutritionist that worked with the oncologist. She's like, "You're
Right.
eating everything right. You're doing everything right." I'm like, "No, but I'm not." It's like something's not working. Something's
Yeah.
wrong. And I would go see these integrative specialists, and no one kind of wanted to touch me because they're like, "Ooh, you had cancer and you had chemo. We don't know about that. So try an
Yeah.
elimination diet." I'm like, no, no, no. Like no one could
Yeah.
hear what I was saying. And
I
so
always kind
I,
of feel like it's like this like hot potato game with if like you have cancer, like you go to your oncologist and they're like you ask them questions about nutrition and they're like, "Oh no, like we don't do that. Like you need to like
Mhm.
talk to a nutritionist." You go to them if they're not specializing in oncology, they pass you off to someone else and it just feels like no one really wants to it feels like they don't want to help you, but really it's that they're what you're saying like there's like this major gap in the healthcare system of like once you're done with cancer or if you're a stage 4 thriver like how do you manage all these other aspects of your life and it's just missing.
Absolutely. It's like nobody wants to invest in that piece of prevention and recovery
Yeah.
because let's be honest, everything we're doing after cancer is also considered prevention of a reoccurrence, right?
Yes.
And that's a huge piece of it. And I don't know about you, you know, you're a stage 4 thriver. Like, I didn't know anything about anything when I finished. I was working
No.
in corporate America as a training and development specialist. Like, I didn't know anything about nutrition and this and that. So I was like, this is crazy. I remember telling my dad, like, this is crazy. Where's the help? Where's the support? Why
Yeah.
don't I have a list of numbers to call? And
Right.
so, like, I remember I eventually just figured I had to start figuring it out myself. And of course, that's like the blessing in disguise, what led me on
Right.
this road. But I started researching and figuring out like I had major gut issues. Every time I ate, the food would just sit in my stomach. I couldn't
Right.
absorb it. So
Right.
it's like, even if you're seeing a nutritionist, it didn't matter what I ate. I couldn't absorb it. I was getting malnourished. My gut
Right.
was so completely destroyed from the chemo, from the antibiotics. No one told me to go on a probiotic. No one told me about gut health, about immunity or anything. So I'm like,
Right.
why am I not digesting food? This is so crazy. So then I started to research and figure it out. And I used myself as a guinea pig and I started to heal my gut back to at least being able to absorb
Absorb.
food, absorb nutrients. And once I started doing that, my energy started to come back and the fatigue lessened and things of that nature. But you know, it's such an important piece that at least like I want your viewers to know and everything too. Like you could be eating all the right things and all the protein and doing all of it. But if your gut is off and you can't absorb the vitamins and minerals and nutrients, like
Yeah.
it's not going to help. You're
It's
not,
pointless.
it's pointless.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So that was like a huge thing. And I would kind of talked to my oncologist about these gut issues. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and fair. That's fair. So once I started
Actually,
to,
it's
Mhm.
funny. So you said probiotics. So I actually asked my doctor, my oncologist, because I always run all of my, other supplements by her just to get her take on them.
Mhm.
Um, well, I was doing that. I've stopped doing that because she says no to everything.
Mhm.
And so with the probiotics, she was like, no, I don't recommend that you take that, which is like so interesting to me because
Why?
they're like, they don't know the interactions between that and the chemo drugs.
Mhm.
So that being said, I'm taking them now and I'm taking a host of other supplements because I've done my own research and I kind of, as you're saying, I'm kind of my like
Advocate.
patient, guinea pig.
Yeah.
I try like one supplement at a time to see how it's working, and see if there's any side effects I come across with it. And then I add in another one. But it is really frustrating because you want your oncologist to kind of give you an okay and say,
Yeah.
yes, this is fine to take. But, I just haven't had that experience.
I know, and I feel like you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
And that's not what they're taught. And unless you're seeing like a functional oncologist, I feel like that advice is not given out through conventional medicine. And it's
Right.
difficult because you're like, I don't want it to mess with any
Of
medications
course.
I'm taking, but it's also like I want to preserve my body and make sure that I'm doing everything on the other end to support my immune system, to support my gut health, right?
Yeah.
To have everything working just in the best way possible. So it can be very frustrating. And then I probably feel like you have to like go to like so many different doctors to get a functional perspective, the conventional
Yeah.
perspective, and then just kind of it's very overwhelming and it's very confusing to try to figure out yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that like I personally just got so frustrated with the lack of help where I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna go get certified. I
Yeah.
found the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, IIN, and I fell in love with their program. I like researched a bunch of different schools, but I loved their program because
Yeah.
you could get certified in integrative health, which is more of whole health. And their whole
Right.
program was like nutrition based, like 50% nutrition and then 50% mind, body, spirit,
Yes.
how our mind is working to make food choices,
Right.
stress management, joy, purpose. Like it
Yeah.
was a completely different way to look at health. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I became obsessed with it. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going back to corporate life.
Yeah.
Like I have to pursue this. And honestly, like my mission, and still to this day, my mission is like nobody should have to feel how I felt after cancer. And it really just does people such a disservice to not have tools and information at your fingertips that are research based to
Right.
help you thrive after cancer and to help prevent a cancer reoccurrence. And it's
Absolutely.
not just food. It's not. I personally think like a huge piece of my diagnosis was stress. The stress that I was
Yeah.
under with my mom and then the grief, the emotional trauma that piggybacked off of it
Right.
was enormous, like enormous. And you don't really hear about that as much. It's not on the front page of the news. It's not, people aren't talking about emotional traumas and stress management and how
Yeah.
important that is for your gut health, for your mental health, and to fight off disease. Like it's just,
Yeah.
it's wild. So I just fell in love with the entire process. And then I started to put it towards cancer recovery. And
Right.
I, again, like went through so much and learned so much about managing anxiety and PTSD and the fears of reoccurrence. And, that 7-year recovery for me to present day has been a total roller coaster. So it's so great that I have clients and I work with people where it's like, I know exactly where they're at in their journey. Not everyone is the
Yeah.
same, but we all go through very similar common themes. So
Right.
it's
Right.
like that identity issue and the skin anxiety that can come up and just understanding triggers and reoccurrences. Like I have 2 daughters now post cancer, but I had severe cancer scares after each pregnancy, after each child.
Right. Right.
I mean, I was like 35 weeks finding a swollen lymph node in my armpit where they told me I have to get it removed and it could be cancerous. And it ended up
Wow.
being excess breast tissue. But like 35 weeks pregnant, as you know, right? Being
Yeah.
pregnant and the
So
hormones and
scary.
everything. And, you just realize, life happens and reoccurrences or fake reoccurrences can pop up. And it's like, we need the tools to learn how to deal with that so that stress doesn't become so overwhelming. And so we know
Right.
how to manage real life issues. And unfortunately, there's no doctors out there that are really helping with that. So
Yeah.
it's great when I'm working with my clients, and they have a trigger pop up and they're like, oh my gosh, and this, I'm like, I know exactly how to walk them through it. I have
Yeah.
tools that I can give people in the moment. And it's so awesome to help people because it's just what I wish I had as I was going through it the last 7 years,
Yeah.
to really get me to like a really good spot.
That sounds honestly so fulfilling. I'm in the corporate world as well. And so I mean, while I do love my career, I think what you're talking about is a whole different thing, right? It's like you're so motivated because this personal experience that you had, and now you're helping other people navigate their experience and making it, you don't want people to go through what you went through. And so I think that's
Mm.
so powerful of a motivation.
It really is. I mean, you're kind of living in this cancer world more than like, I never wanted to talk about cancer again. So the fact
I
that I'm
was the
like
same way. Yeah.
talking about cancer recovery 24/7 is just crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, if it just helps people, I mean, if it helps one person, and the common theme that I see in like a ton of clients are they're feeling really alone. Like, oh my gosh, like other people are experiencing this and it's not just me. And let me tell you, my clients are young, very
Yeah.
young, so it's like, oh my gosh, you are not alone. Or why don't they tell you this when you're, exiting cancer or cancer treatments? And, it's like people are feeling all of those things in those first 2 years after. It can be just very strenuous. And,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's crazy. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Well, I'm obviously I hate that you've gone through this yourself, but I think what you're doing now is amazing. And um, I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and I just think you're just doing such amazing work. And so I think for everyone listening in who is experienced with your work or wants to learn more, I'm just so grateful that you're doing this.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me. I really try so hard to put very digestible information out, and
Yeah.
as research comes out, I feel like it can be very overwhelming and
Yes.
very, very fearful when we get certain messages on social media and things like that. But I think that everyone has like good intentions behind it. And I think that people go to social media for this outlet because you're not going to read this in a newspaper.
Right.
You're not going to hear this on the news, studies that are being done and things that we can do in our day-to-day life that help prevent a reoccurrence or help prevent cancer in the first place. But it's
Right.
almost like, at least for me personally, I want to shout it from the rooftops that simple, small changes can make such a difference for your future. And if
Right.
you are dealing with cancer, if you are in cancer recovery, if you're just looking to prevent, these small changes work for everybody across the board. And, I try to make it so it's not scary and overwhelming, but just like, hey, one small step can yield such big changes. And I also try to coach people into it's whole health, right? It's
Right.
your traumas, your emotions, your purpose, and your stress, and your joy, and your relationships. And it's also your food and your movement, your sleep and your hydration and your toxin
Right.
exposure. Like it's everything. And I
Yeah.
feel like people either are focusing just on nutrition or just on this. And it's like we have to remember that we are one full body and all of it plays a part. And the more and more we can know what we can control at the end of the day, kind of the better. I mean, I kind of see the information that I put out, or at least the information that I see and receive, as empowering and like, wow, we actually have so much more of a bigger hand in prevention than we even know that I ever knew. And
Right.
it's wild. And I just feel like everybody should know it and at least feel empowered by it and not so overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the amount of information is highly overwhelming. I think a lot of it's very fear based, and I think that when you're actively fighting cancer. It's just really overwhelming to deal with that type of messaging. You want something that's lighter, more approachable, and I think the fear-based messaging just doesn't sit well. Um, I would love to talk a little bit about like you talked about day to day. So for people listening in, let's say that they want to try to reduce some of the toxic load, whether it's like through skincare or whether it's through like household products. Maybe you can touch a little bit about um, both of those topics and, what are some things that we can do today to help reduce our toxic load and exposure to toxins?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's such an important thing. And I think that it's becoming more and more of a topic because more and more research is coming out about it too. So, chemicals found in cleaning products have been linked to cancer, endocrine disruption, respiratory issues, allergies, etc. Right? The list kind of goes on. So, when I think about that, which this has been more recent in my cancer recovery journey, of making these swaps and these changes. But when I think about that, like, gosh, when we were all stuck in COVID and everyone's bleaching everything
Yes.
and we have closed windows, no air coming in, we're just using these cleaning products on our groceries and spraying everything down and sanitizing 24/7, right? Like when you think
Yeah.
about all of that, you want to be putting the safest products in your house for you and your family. And we see here that there's so many chemicals and fragrances in all the cleaning supplies and everything too. So
Right.
making simple changes where as things start to run out, if your multi-purpose spray that you're cleaning your countertops with every day starts to run out, think about what can I replace this with that has better ingredients and that's not going to harm my health. Because the reality is we all have a toxic load, right?
Right.
And it takes a while to get to our toxic load or, to get to the tipping point of it. And sometimes we don't feel those symptoms right away. It takes years and years and years. But once you
Right.
get to that tipping point, it's like then we kind of make the changes and we realize all of these things. But if we can preventatively do it, we're just putting ourselves in such a better position. And I
Right.
think now is like such a good time because there's so many companies out there that are coming out with safe and safe cleaning products and products that are scented with essential oils and things like that, where it's not going to be harming our health and we can feel good about using it. If you have kids out there, what you're wiping high chairs down with and stuff like that,
Right.
the kids are like licking countertops every 5 seconds. So
Yeah.
what you're using really matters. And, there's also been this like burst of autoimmune issues going on as well. And when we hear that these chemicals found in products and cleaning products have so many like endocrine disruptors in it, it's like, oh, well, gosh,
Yeah.
like it kind of all makes sense now. We kind of don't know what we don't know. And a lot of
Right.
things aren't necessarily disclosed on labels.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that are fragrance based, all of the sprays and the air fresheners and all of that, like avoid that. Like a
Yeah.
really good tip is go fragrance free. I know it's
Right.
not fun. I know nobody wants to do it. I don't want to do it either, but I know it's healthy for me.
Yeah.
And if you can go fragrance free or find products that have essential oil fragrances in it, you are already eliminating so many toxins in your body. In fact, there was a study done in 2023 that found that reducing exposure to toxins, specifically like parabens and phthalates, which are found in like deodorant and lotions and makeup, any kind of like
Shampoo.
shampoo, like any kind of
Yeah.
personal care products. So reducing your exposure to those toxins in a 28-day trial period reversed cancer-associated changes in breast tissues.
Wow.
So that means they took a group of women, okay, and they took blood samples and tissue samples and said, don't use your normal products anymore. Use these non-toxic products.
Right.
And then after 28 days, they reevaluated them and they saw that they could reverse cancer-associated changes, or cancer-associated changes in the breast tissue were reversed. That's
Amazing.
huge. That is like such a big thing, right? And so when you think about, well, what are parabens and phthalates in, right? Like you said, shampoo, lotions, makeup, skincare, deodorant. So
Right.
really understanding like what we're putting on our body is absorbing all of that, right?
Right.
Not to mention just in like makeup, right? Then they add fragrance to the makeup as well. So you're
Right.
already getting the chemicals and then you're getting the fragrance in it too. So it's, when we start to like know better, we start to open our eyes up. And again, it's a great time. There's great makeup companies out there that have quality makeup that you can feel good about using that are free from these toxins, where you're already made one small change of just changing over your skincare or your makeup or your deodorant or your lotion can help reduce toxins in your exposure or potential for cancer.
Yeah. I think the way that you, like your advice, I think when something runs out, replacing it with something that is a cleaner brand, I think that's a great way to do it. I think some of us, I mean, I'll speak for myself. It's really overwhelming when you start walking around your house and you start looking at all of the products in the house. You look at all of your skincare, your makeup, and all this stuff is so expensive, right? And
Oh my
so
gosh,
to,
so
to think
expensive.
about to think about replacing it all at one time is just not
It's
possible.
impossible. It's the
Yeah. And
same thing
so
as it's the same thing like if like when like if clients come to me and they want nutrition advice for after cancer. You cannot
right.
go in your pantry and completely overhaul it and throw everything out. You are setting yourself
No.
up to fail. And it's
Right.
it's too much. It's too overwhelming. So you have
Yes.
to like break it down. And you're right. Everything, and especially anything healthy or non-toxic, is more pricey.
Right.
So it's impossible to do it. But as things run out and just slowly starting to replace them, when you
Right.
see those good products that I talk about or other people talk about, just save it. Save it. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
my mascara's low. Where's that good brand again? I'm going to try
Right.
it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's perfect. Okay, so what I'm gonna maybe do is like I'm gonna just mentally walk around my house and maybe you can give me like clean swap brands.
Well, I love that.
So let's go to the kitchen first. So dish soap. I think the most common dish soap that people are using is like a Dawn, either liquid or spray. What's a recommendation that you would give there?
So there's a brand called Attitude. You can get it on Amazon. They do hand soap. They do dish soap. A ton of different like liquid dish soaps, and they're
Okay.
great. They're EWG certified. This is a
Okay.
good tip too. If you're ever not sure about a product, if you come across it, because there's so much greenwashing that goes on too, you
Yeah.
can go to the EWG website and plug in what it is, and it'll give you a rating of like, A, this is really good, or F, this has like a ton of crap in it, avoid it, right? So
Yeah.
if you're ever just not sure, or you see something on social media, you're like, oh, is that really good? Just plug it in and it'll give you
Okay.
like a good rating on it. But Attitude is a good brand for that.
Perfect. And what's considered a good rating on EWG?
So it'll say EWG certified, and then I think, which is great. Like that
Yeah.
certification is fantastic. And then
Okay.
underneath that, I think it's an A or A plus maybe. And then it
Okay.
goes from
Perfect.
A to F. So, and
Okay.
it'll actually tell you what each score means. And then it'll tell you the brand, if you put the brand in, the ingredients that pop up, you can click on the ingredients and it'll tell you the danger of each ingredient and like what it is. So if
Oh
you're
wow.
like, if you're somebody that has a ton of skin allergies, you're going to be a lot more sensitive to it than maybe somebody that doesn't have a lot of skin allergies. So you can kind of look at like that, like rating mechanism to see like where it falls to.
Okay. Okay, perfect. That sounds great. Okay, so Attitude is the brand. Do they also have like countertop cleaners, like an all-purpose cleaner? Or is there a different brand that you would recommend for that?
Okay, so I'm not sure if I know that they have a good window cleaner, okay, which
Okay.
is great because that's really hard to find. When people are addicted to their Windex, okay, I know
Yeah.
that. So I know they have a good glass cleaner. I use that. So for countertops, I use the Hue and Grace there's like a multi-purpose cleaner and a deep cleaner. And they're
Okay.
really great. They're an amazing brand, with an amazing message. The CEO had a ton of like fertility issues and realized all the stuff about hormone disruptors and products and everything. And she created this brand to really help take the guesswork out of what to get.
Mhm.
Um, and so, and it's great. It's concentrated and it comes with like glass amber bottles. It actually looks cute. So
Okay.
when it's on the counter, I'm like, oh, it looks really cute. But it's concentrated. It lasts forever. But it's a set and it comes with a deep cleaner and then it comes with just like a multi-purpose cleaner. And I use it for everything. I use
Okay.
it for everything and it's great. It's fantastic.
Okay, awesome. I'm definitely going to look that up. That's great. Okay, let's maybe go to the laundry room. So Tide Pods and Bounce dryer sheets are probably the most common used. What would you recommend for that?
Yeah, I would say like go without the dryer sheets 100% if you can. And the wool dry balls are a really great replacement for that. You can get that off Amazon. You can even like
Okay.
put a little essential oil on the wool dryer balls too if you want like a scent to it.
Okay.
That's a great alternative.
Okay. And then what about the Tide Pods?
Oh, so okay. So laundry detergent, this is a huge one. I think everyone should swap out because it is so contaminated. Okay, you can do Molly Suds for laundry. You can do Truly Free. I love Truly Free. I do the fragrance free, but it's a
Okay.
really clean brand and you can get it on Amazon. You can get it straight from their website. So really accessible. There's also a brand called Aspen that's also on the EWG website, and they're
Okay.
scented through essential oils as well. So there's a couple of different options.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. All right, let's go to the bathroom. So in the shower, shampoo, conditioner, body wash.
Okay, so I love Primarily Pure, like obsessed with them. They have great body washes, shampoos. Pure Haven is a good shampoo, non-toxic shampoo. And then like body bars and soap, like Primarily Pure has great ones for that as well.
Okay.
And they have a little baby kit, which I love, for
Okay.
kids and everything too. But yeah, and I also use Primarily Pure for deodorant. I've
Okay.
tested out so many natural deodorants, and
Yeah.
so many do not work, or just like, I don't know, they're just not great. But the Primarily Pure one, and I have no affiliation with Primarily Pure at all. Like they
Yeah.
just are, it works so good and it smells so good. And the
Okay.
ingredients are great. And they also have dry shampoo, which is great
Oh,
for
wow.
products because I don't know if you remember, but like a few years ago, all of these news reports came out with carcinogens in dry shampoo and it's
Yes.
going directly in your scalp and your scalp absorbing it. So that was like a huge thing that I swapped out right away. And I do
Yeah.
like for that.
Yeah. I've just become a big fan of wearing baseball caps. So instead of using dry
Same.
shampoo, I just throw on a hat now.
I know. I feel like I'm in a baseball hat like 90% of the week, 100%.
Yeah.
Another good
Um,
spot for the bathroom too is stainless steel tongue scraper. It's
yes, I've heard of
like,
that instead of the
yeah,
plastic ones.
instead of the plastic ones, and like dry scraping your tongue first thing in the morning is great for removing toxins. Toxins build up as we sleep and they land on our tongue. So instead of
Right.
swallowing that when we wake up, cleaning our tongue off helps get rid of those toxins as well, and it helps support your lymphatic system too.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. Tell me a little bit about some of your favorite skincare or makeup brands that you like.
I love Crunchy. Crunchy is probably my favorite because I'm such a makeup girl. Like
Yeah.
I just love makeup. And I feel like their products last the longest for like
Okay.
non-toxic makeup. But then also just like their pigments, like their foundation is really, it's really thick. It's really a good consistency. Like they have a light one and then they have like a medium one. And so I feel like with skincare and makeup, some of the non-toxic ones out there just get super oily or cake or
Yeah.
they like, or rub off in like an hour.
Right.
And so Crunchies was the only one that I've landed on where I'm like, okay, like this can last all day. I feel like it has good coverage, and then like their lip glosses and eyeshadow palettes, like they're all just super beautiful and they
Right.
last. They last.
That's great. I think, yeah, where I kind of landed was like I couldn't find any good brands. And so I just try to wear makeup as less as possible. And then I just use my normal, I don't want to call them toxic brands, but the normal brands that we're all used to wearing.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to try that out and see how that looks because I'm a big makeup girl as well. And so I want to find something
Yeah.
that still looks good,
Yeah.
but
Well,
clean.
trust me, I spent like years spending so much money on like so many different brands and everything. And some of those like foundation sticks and stuff, I don't know. For me and my skin, it just didn't, a lot of them just didn't work well. But I always
Yeah.
go back to Crunchy because I'm like, they're consistent. And gosh, I even spoke with somebody in their company about how they read their labels
Hmm.
and the products that go into all of their makeup, and they are EWG certified. They have like every credential out there. And it's just like, they do such a good job at being a buffer with like ensuring that it's non-toxic makeup.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. What's your take on makeup wipes, by the way?
Well, I used to use them all the time. And then I remember like going to Honest and using them because
Yeah.
Honest still says like phthalate free and paraben free. I mean, I would say like you don't want any fragrance in it, and just to really pay attention to the ingredients in it, or just
Yeah.
go with like a face wash, at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, I think, better for your skin. You're not like tugging and pulling as you are
Right.
with the wipe. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
and anything that off the top of your head about like a moisturizer that would be good to use that's a clean brand?
So like a facial moisturizer.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so Hue and Grace and Crunchy both have a facial moisturizer that are both really good. For like body moisturizer, I love the Primarily Pure. They have like lavender eucalyptus body butters and almond butter. Like their body butters are so nice, especially for winter, at least here in the
Okay.
Midwest. Like I use it on the reg. And Hue and Grace also has a really good body oil, and it's great for the summer too because it doubles as an insect repellent.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And the Hue and Grace face oil also acts as like a barrier. So if you're still using some of those more traditional makeup products,
Yeah.
putting that barrier on first can also help with like reducing.
Help block out the, okay. Okay. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Great. Wonderful. That's a great list of brands that you gave us. And I can't wait to go look them up and do my own, experiments and research there. Michelle, as we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add? How can people find you and get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, of course. So I'm on Instagram at revival.health.wellness. My website, revivalhealthwellness.com. There's a million buttons to press about working with me. I offer free one-on-one consultations, like a health consultation, to see if it would be a good match to work together. I do work with only cancer survivors, nobody that's currently or actively in treatment, I should say.
Okay.
And yeah, my program is laid out on my website. And I would say just for anybody that's starting off this journey of like cancer recovery or non-toxic living or even prevention, like it all kind of falls under the same umbrella, but just know that like change is hard. And when you start this process, it's just so easy to get overwhelmed, and just to slow down, take it one day at a time as the products slowly run out, start to replace them, and just know that all these small changes in your daily habits really add up to good overall health. Every small habit makes a difference, and try to find that information as empowering and focus on what you can control over what you can't control. And and start to make some changes in daily habits, and it pays off so much at the end of the day.
Awesome. That's so great. Thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome.
Thanks for listening to The Other C Word, hosted by Bismolology. New episodes drop Mondays. Connect with me on socials at Bismolology, and let's all learn, grow, and inspire each other.